Oh, what the hell fried the chicken?
Buckle up, kids, because we're going on a Pender Bender. It's Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic reread series for fans of all shapes and sizes. As always, I'm your host, Evan, joined by my co-conspirators, Lauren and Bruce. And guys, how are you enjoying Sonic Frontiers, a game that is released now?
Sonic Frontiers is a game.
I agree with this assessment entirely.
You guys are doing a real bad job keeping KFAB up here. People are gonna know we record this in advance.
Oh, because that was clearly something that was in question in the first place.
Okay, well, the game will be out by the time this episode goes up, so I hope it's good. Hope everybody's enjoying. It's fine. It looks okay, I guess. Maybe it'll be good.
It looks like a game.
We're gonna go ahead and start into our regular Sonic routine here with Sonic the Hedgehog number 31.
I know these covers always lie, but Snively and Robotnik and some sort of purple robot are on the cover. None of those appear in the issue.
I mean, the robot's in it, but it's gold.
Oh, well, is it? Does it really look like that?
Well,
I don't even remember this robot.
So it looks kind of like that at one point. It doesn't look as good as that.
Maybe that's just the art style and the color together. It just does not look at all the same to me.
I'll say the thing that weirds me out on this cover is above the little blurb that says Knuckles solo story, there's like a dude carved into the mountain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I don't think it's a Sonic character.
It's Mobius Mount Rushmore was some like famous Mobian person.
I suppose so.
Thinking with your brain.
Yeah, but the one thing that is big on this cover is a train, and there is indeed a train in the main story of this issue. A Robot Rides the Rails, written and drawn both by Ken Penders. The Freedom Fighters and Jeffrey St. John attempt to sabotage a train with a dangerous Robotnik mech on it.
I like the quiet and Jeffrey St. John.
I like to see Nicole again. Nicole's great. I always like their robotic attitude. There's a line where Sally's like, "Nicole, will you look at that?" And they respond with scanning.
I noticed something specifically in this issue or maybe it finally culminated in this issue. Nicole feels very different in this than she did in Sad AM.
Really?
At least to me.
She doesn't quite have she's like concerned here, where she's a little more like, I guess in the show it was that Sonic would rub off on her and she would become more sarcastic.
Right.
Yeah, so in my opinion, this is more reflective of the original Nicole.
Yeah.
Than the sarcastic one.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, like, Nicole's later personality is much more sincere, not really snarky at all, so that, I suppose that fits. But, yeah, we've got this whole issue drawn by Penders, and boy is his art still jank.
So this first page, Sally jumping onto the train, it looks, instead of, like, landing gracefully, it kind of just looks like she slams her chin right into the train.
That is exactly
it
what
looks
it
bad.
looks like.
Like, I don't like to make fun of art, because,
No, I mean, it's not like I'm an extremely talented artist. I draw stuff shitty in MS Paint on purpose, because if I try to do something genuine, I put in a lot of effort for diminishing returns.
Sure.
I still know better than to constantly try to treat characters' eyelids like their eyebrows, which is what Penders keeps doing with Sally here, but still.
We got a bit of the Family Guy bedroom eyes going.
Oh god, Lois. I've been turned into a chipmunk. That's not a good Peter Griffin impression, I'm sorry.
That's a good bad Peter Griffin.
Fair enough. So yeah, the first big chunk of this is mostly just Sally jumping on trains and Nicole telling her to be careful, but we're trying to keep under control the Dynamac 3000. What kind of name for a robot is that?
It's a name Penders would come up with.
Why is it always something 1000?
'Cause that makes it sound high-tech and cool.
Yes, indeed.
Guess.
So there's, it's like this is a very straightforward story for the most part. They've got one goal in mind and they pretty much just progress toward it in a linear fashion. The only thing that really makes for a shake-up per se is that, Sally's coming in here, she finds the bot, it's turned off, she's trying to, figure out what's going on, and then two hands clasp over her mouth, and it's like, oh, Sally gets kidnapped, something bad's happened. And then it turns out to be, like, Jeffrey St. John who's just, like, groping her?
So I tried to check, and I can't see that he ever explains why he did that. She's just like, "Why'd you do that?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just here on the same mission you are."
He's
Avoids
just
the
a fucking
question.
creep, is why.
Hey, I'm glad I'm
Yeah.
not the only one who feels that way.
Well, it's like in this first page of chapter 2, whatever you want to call it. A, Sally's eyes are all messed up and it looks very funny. And B, like he just kisses her without her consent, and you could literally see that she friggin' like pushes him away. And this is the guy that we're supposed to think is like cool and is like better than Sonic, because Sonic keeps screwing up and getting punched in this comic.
She doesn't react terribly angrily, although I guess you could just say she's being overly polite.
Well, I mean, they've got a job to do, but it's like he should take it seriously too, and just not.
Yeah.
Just stop being gross. Just stop being gross. That's all I'm asking.
This introduction alone is like, oh great, he's back.
Yeah, it's not doing well so far. I think it gets a little bit better once, we're just getting into the action, but then you have him and Sonic, like, competing with each other over Sally, and it's like,
The soap opera bullshit is coming back.
I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I preferred the way that Knuckles and Sonic fight.
At least then it's not over some girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly.
It's definitely better once it gets into the action, although I'll say it's weird because it's not very, like, there's not a lot of spectacle to it, because it's kind of disconnected and just disjointed.
Like, there's like a few lines about how it can only react and you can have to scramble its brain or something, but I don't feel like they really there isn't a whole lot of thought put into the way they fight it. They just kind of fight it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like a big, Transformers-style mech bot that turns into a weird spider thing with tendrils. Sounds cool, but, mostly it fights the same way either way.
Yeah, there's some robots that Robotnik gets. I guess you could say across the series, but I know a lot of them from the comics that seem not like Robotnik robots. They just seem like generic robots, and this is one of them.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly have a lot of the personality, does it?
Yeah.
Here's something funny. Near the end, Jeffrey has those two guys that are like his men that he hangs out with, who apparently are named Dolph and Jean-Claude, but they're normally brown bear dudes. Chipmunks. But because Penders drew them from behind here, they just got miscolored with the same colors as Jeffrey.
Oh, I was very confused by that.
You like Jeffrey? Well, here's two more.
Yeah, they look identical to him.
3 times the hands. But anyway, so they beat the robot. Jeffrey and Sally share a more consensual looking kiss, I suppose, and then we get this really, like, foreshadowing in a bad way panel of Sonic saying, "She's just trying to get me jealous over some geek with a beret. Well, 2 can play at that game."
Sonic's gonna get a beret.
And then that note at the bottom that says, "Who do you think should win the hand of Princess Sally Ryder?"
Oh god.
It's such bait, and I don't even, like, I'm trying to remember, does Sonic do anything in these following issues to try and make Sally jealous? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
As I recall, this whole thing only goes on when Jeffrey is around.
Of course.
Which I guess means that it is on some level contained.
Yeah, but it's still it feels icky.
Oh, it is icky. There's nothing more or less to say about it.
This feels like stuff that doesn't belong in Sonic.
I mean, it's not like the main Sonic series has the healthiest dynamics between romantic pairings, but it's just, it doesn't take itself very seriously. Amy's thing with Sonic is not like, it's not like a problem that they need to solve. It's just kind of a gimmick.
Yeah.
And speaking of gimmicks, we have I can't even call this a second story. It's just 2 pages of more bait that they call Lost and Found Part 1, where Knuckles is searching for the now missing Chaotix and being spied on more by Archimedes, but nothing happens.
They all feel like bait to just delve into world building.
But nothing's being built.
Yeah, nothing, exactly. Nothing's being built. It's just like an excuse to let's shove a bunch of lore down your throat that don't make no sense for like 2 pages and then just go to another story.
And it's only 2 pages, yeah. So I'm like, was Pender's like, hey, I'm getting tired of having to wait for the specials. Can I write my stories in regular issues? Okay, but you only get 2 pages.
Ironically, the quote-unquote highlight of this story, because the Dynamac thing it doesn't matter. It's not a dumb, like, cheap gag story, because it's still basically fundamentally an action-adventure thing, but it's still basically filler.
Yeah, it's just to advance the whole romantic thing that Penders is setting up.
That also doesn't really go anywhere, which makes it ironic that the actual highlight of this story that is not a filler story is the Gallagher story, which is Rotor in Tundra Road, Part 1, which is also drawn by Art Mawhinney. Rotor receives a distress call from his home up north and arrives to discover his family and every other walrus at the North Pole has been hypnotized by Robotnik.
I didn't expect a Rotor solo story, but I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, more characterization for more characters is fun.
I think they were trying to test the waters because they've done the Sally stories, which led into the Sally miniseries. They did the Tails stories, which led into the Tails miniseries. Spoiler alert, we're starting to get Knuckles stories that are going to lead into the Knuckles miniseries next episode. So, it's like Rotor is next on the list, which is... He's not going to be popular enough for them to even greenlight a miniseries, to be honest, but...
Sure, but it's still kind of, it's cool to see.
It is more than nothing.
So, I mean, this is only half a story, so there's not really a whole lot to talk about here. It's basically Rotor just getting into the main conflict, and he doesn't get to really solve anything until the next part.
They do get to bait us by making it look like he's going to die, though.
Oh, yeah, I gotta have that death fake out.
Of course.
I like the SWAT bot with the ice cube head. Looks like a Brickster bot.
It does, actually. Let's
Damn.
go.
Never played Lego Island as a kid.
You're missing out, man.
I don't know why I specified as a kid. I never played it, period.
Well, I don't know. I don't have anything to say about this story. It's like I'm saying that it matters more than the Pender stuff, and that is true, but it's still a Gallagher story about a bunch of characters who are just Rotor in different outfits or sizes or tertiary sexual characteristics.
It's a bunch of Rotor NFTs.
Oh, don't do that.
I would not put it that way.
No.
Yeah, no. We end on a cliffhanger, and that's about it. There's nothing to really say. Hope he doesn't die, and that his family also doesn't die. I think I'm probably going to be okay on that hope.
Probably.
And it's funny, because you'd think that would continue right into Sonic number 32 here, but no, they're just in ice for a completely different reason in this issue.
And Rotor is there as well.
Yeah, I don't know how the timeline is supposed to work with that. Writer, editor, communication, etc. But, yeah, the story here is Blast from the Past, written by DeCesare and drawn by Mawhinney. After avoiding an encounter with the roboticized Mutsky, Sonic and friends unearth a frozen caveman.
Before we get there, I like that Uncle Chuck shows up to call off the robots, showing that he's now a main part of the crew.
Hell yeah.
And it's weird because Mutsky remembers Sonic at first, but also attacks him, or Chuck still thinks he's a threat. So I don't know if he's in partial control of his actions.
He's attacking Sonic, and then halts his attack just as the other SWAT bots are turning back, which makes me think that Sonic interpreted that as him remembering, but really was just turning around to leave.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
The whims of dogs are difficult to understand.
That's true.
Yeah, but the actual plot of this story is not technically filler, but it might as well be. It's just that they unfreeze this cave guy, and he has trouble adjusting to the modern life or whatever.
Isn't there actually just a movie about this already?
Oh, there's so many takes on this kind of story. I'm thinking of Scooby-Doo, Am I glad that he's in there and we're frozen out here?
Oh my gosh.
I think I'm thinking of Encino Man. I don't know if that actually is the plot of that movie, because I don't think I've ever seen it.
It's okay. I've never seen any movies. Ask me what
Damn.
happens in Alien. I can't tell you.
I think there's an alien, maybe.
No, I think that movie's about wizards.
No, that's Star
Probably.
Wars.
No,
You
but that's
could
not
argue
fair
that
because
is
Star Wars
true, though.
actually is about wizards.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. Damn. All right.
So back to the
Fun.
story. Yeah, this is another mostly silly plot, which makes me question when Uncle Chuck is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't bring you back in time because I don't have a time machine, but maybe live in this jungle and it'll be close enough." And normally I would forgive that line because there was a time travel story. I'm like, oh, but it was just silly, non-canon. But this is another silly story, so I would think, no, you got to account for that.
Sure.
You have continuity within the silly stories, at least, surely. Surely they could have just, like, sent him back in time. I mean, you know, you just build a time machine, easy peasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, with an asterisk, just because even though this is a quote-unquote silly story, it is also technically a silly story that has some amount of relevance to the plot, because this guy does indeed show up later in another silly feeling story that's not quite silly. And believe it or not, when we get to Mammoth Mogul, this guy is partially relevant to his story.
That actually makes sense, because given what I know about Mogul.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's, you know, there's a couple good gangs, a couple good moments, you know, they get Sonic's dog back by the end.
Right.
Hell yeah.
That's all I got.
It's the dog. Actually, I have one thing. 8,000 years is way too young for a caveman.
I guess this is Earth, so yeah, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, but is he... I guess the question is, did they have a second ice age at some point?
They would have to for him to be frozen. So
Yeah, so okay, second ice age, that makes sense.
that would be the only thing I can think
I
of.
guess, no, you know what? Because the fact that he did live at the same time as Mogul in the past would mean that it is after Earth became the way that it is currently.
Yeah.
Because Mogul would have evolved at the same time. So yeah, I'll say they convince Moby is this guy's name, I might add. They basically get him to understand them just by like drawing pictures, which feels a little easy to me.
Well, they at least set up the fact that he was actually an artist, so I think it makes a little more sense there.
I guess it's weird to have that, but have him also be primitive. But I guess he's also kind of, you know, got some level of intelligence. Maybe it's really just a language barrier and culture shock.
Mm.
Yeah, I think he's smart, but he's also strong and was scared at first, and so attack, why not?
I guess so. Do we even need to talk about the 2 pages of Pender's whatever stuff here?
Yes, we do, actually, because I would like to file a charge against Archie Comics for false advertising. The cover says Solo Knuckles story inside. Knuckles is not in this story.
You're right. It's just the chaotic.
Am I right? Yeah.
In a black void before a door opens, and they meet Archimedes, but we don't see Archimedes. We just see the silhouette of his stupid hat.
I think if I bought this comic back in the day, and I was like a fan of Knuckles, like, oh, Solo Knuckles story inside, I could take this back to the shop, and I might actually get my money back.
Maybe.
Would you take back the other ones too, because the Knuckles stories were bad?
No, I'm just saying this one. You literally you could. I mean, there are Solo Knuckles stories, even if they're bad.
Okay, but could you make the case that they're not stories?
Oh yeah, well I suppose you're right.
Yeah.
All right. We dunk on Penders enough as is. The other part of this issue is the second half of Tundra Road with Gallagher and Mowini. Rotor is saved by Celia and Augustus of the Arctic Mobians, which, not Arctic freedom fighters, I want to reiterate that just because they draw a distinction for some reason and it still annoys me. And together they formulate a plan to wrench Rotor's family from Robotnik's clutches.
It doesn't annoy me, because I would have been really annoyed if we had another solo adventure with Rotor this time, where he just gets saved by a freedom fighter group, but instead it's just some dude, so that's a little better.
Well, I'll say he does more here than Tails did in his miniseries.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
And,
Still not a whole lot to say about it.
No, their plan is to Trojan horse it, which is like, come on. I don't know how the heck they make that.
Ice. I don't know.
It's red ice.
Not ice?
It's blood ice. I don't know.
But yeah, it makes me realize that this is actually also another story that doesn't take itself way too seriously. There was a line in the other one about Robotnik saying the budget was too high to melt the whole world, and so he froze the whole world instead.
Well,
But
well, I mean, that's specifically a joke about Kevin Costner Waterworld. But yeah.
So saving the day with just a Trojan horse is like, oh, okay. I guess there wasn't really going to be a whole lot to this. Which, I mean, I didn't think Rotor had a chance anyway, but they didn't really try to sell a whole grand adventure, did they?
Not
Not really. And it's like you say save the day, and it's like they do, but the walruses are still hypnotized by the end, and they just send them floating off on an iceberg.
Yeah, you got to have that hook for the miniseries.
Exactly. For the miniseries, that'll never happen, and for all we know, they're by the end of the comics, they're still out there.
I'm pretty sure this plot point of Rotor's family being like hypnotized and out on the water, they're not going to follow up on that until like the Sonic Adventure era, or like after.
Oh my god. Okay, that's interesting.
Which it shows, exactly where this was on the priorities list.
At that point, what's the point of doing this story in the first place?
Well, I mean, they thought that if we give Rotor a solo story, maybe readers like him enough that they'll want us to make more. That's why they say write in at the end. It's just...
Well, I get that, but I stand by our theories that anytime it's said right in, it hasn't really meant anything because it's just whatever the writers or whatever the comic wants to do.
I am thinking that is true much of the time, but I do think they use sonograms sometimes.
I guess.
I do think that Devin is probably correct that there was some thought that maybe we can launch another miniseries, but let's get some actual data first. And so they use the sonograms for an actual purpose instead of just a justification for their own insanity.
And I mean, it's like, if they wanted to do a Rotor story without sonograms, they could do that because they're clearly just doing whatever the hell they want in the rest of these stories. Because look at Sonic number 33 here. What is this?
Oh no, we're on to Sonic 33.
Alright, so we have commented plenty of times about covers that write checks that the issue cannot cash. This is, of course, the only cover that writes a check that the issue can cash.
Yes, it is. It is very accurate to what happens in the story. Oh
my god, it's a well drawn cover. I'd like to point that out.
Yeah, but it's also fucking disgusting.
It is disgusting.
So, are you going to explain? I'm going to explain to the viewers what the cover is.
It's Sonic fighting inside someone's innards. Everybody can tell.
Yeah,
it's exactly what it looks like. Maybe this is just a me thing, but I played like Bowser's Inside Story when I was a kid, and that game, I mean, it's a very fun game,
sure,
a blast, but I thought it was disgusting.
It is kind of disgusting.
Ventured inside of Bowser. So maybe it's just a me thing, but I think making like this is another silly story. It's not taken seriously, but where you get this weird body travel, I just, no, it does not jive with me.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you're gonna have someone fight viruses inside someone's body, then you should probably focus less on the biological functions and more on just making viruses look like creepy little spider leg, geometric head things. You look at this and it's like, instantly you understand, gee, I wonder who wrote this one. It's like, this isn't something Penders would write. And De Cesare is mostly focused on just like inoffensive stuff. So of course this is gonna be Michael Gallagher. And drawn by Dave Monick. It's Let's Get Small. When Sonic finds the rest of the Freedom Team suffering from Robotnik-induced illness, he has to shrink down to help their antibodies fight the French virus.
As if it couldn't get worse, the puns are full power here too.
The puns hurt me. They really hurt me.
Yeah, it's like, again, it's like I'm looking at this issue as we're talking about it, and I'm about to say, what do you want me to say about it? And it's like, I'll tell you what I want to say. I want to say, please stop making me look at this. There's like pustules that shoot. There's like weird gaping like sphincters.
Like, I know this is just like a silly comic, but I'm still going to point out that shrinking down to cure disease is a ludicrous solution. Uncle Chuck is a robot and immune to disease. Why can't he develop a cure?
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, medical science and mechanics are two very different fields. What I want to know
No. If you're a scientist in fiction, you are smart and you can do anything sciencey. That's how it works.
No, but we just in a few issues are gonna get an actual medical doctor here who is not a mechanic. I don't know where the hell he is during all this because he just shows up when Benders writes him in.
Also, from Sat AM, but I think the premise is the same. Chuck did develop robotization, right? So
Yeah,
he
well,
has
we
some
don't.
knowledge of
To be fair, we don't know
medical
that yet.
things.
That is true. Yeah, and I guess that's
So
that's
it's not
biotech.
completely
so
unjustifiable.
sort of, I don't know. I don't even want to talk about this. It's exactly what you expect. It's bad puns. The French virus has a crowbar that he hits people with. The antibodies is an antibody and are dressed up as like a colorblind fat woman or whatever. I don't know. They fight and they win and they're all better and it doesn't matter. You know, I
My one comment is that I find it an odd bit of continuity that they brought back the shrink and large component way back from Universe Salamander.
Universe Salamander. Yeah.
And I guess you could say even apparently that was before when they rescued Bunny, although there was no indication it was there. They just said that was where they got it from originally.
There's so many other uses you could have for just an actual shrink growth ray.
Yeah, no, 100%. Those along with like, time machines or the very easy interdimensional travel, like all those things are just very underutilized because it's just for the sake of making silly stories.
Sure.
That's all this is.
Yeah, and it's feeling more and more alien in an idiom where the rest of the comic is becoming more action-oriented.
Yeah.
But I suppose anything looks like more of a story compared to this another 2-page Pender's tease. Although this one actually has Mike Kantrovich credited on writing, so it's like, what does this man do? I don't understand because Pender's writes some of these alone. Others of these have Kantrovich. It's like this is like 5 lines of dialogue. What makes the difference? And I want to highlight that this is not Archimedes spying on Knuckles. This is a different guy in a computer room spying on Knuckles. Although, you know what? It's not that big a deal because we are going to meet this guy officially tonight. So it's not a big deal. Yeah, nothing to say about it. Again, as usual. There is another story in this, which is called Sonic Shot, which I kind of find hilarious. It's all Penders still, so it still looks jank, but it's Sonic and the gang playing ice hockey against Snively and some SWAT bots. And what I love about this issue is that Snively shows up and asks to play hockey with them, and they're like, what kind of trap is this? And he's like, nothing, I just really miss playing hockey.
I mean, enough to Snively.
Yeah, this is, I think, a stretch. If I try to take this story seriously, it doesn't really seem in character for Snively, but at the same time, I do kind of like it, and I think it kind of does fit, actually. I could see him doing that, just wanting to take a break. Yeah,
I could see it.
Well, and it's funny because Robotnik tries to interfere and make problems, and by the end, he fails, and Snively's like, that's okay.
Yeah, if I do actually choose to take this seriously, I like when Robotnik is spying on them, he's like, what's Snively doing? What? And then he's like, wait a minute, it's a brilliant plan to lull them into a false sense of security, which makes it, which reveals that Robotnik will, insult Snively to the end of the earth when he's right in front of him, but he knows full well that Snively is actually quite smart and will admit it when he's on his own.
It's a surreal story, but I do kind of enjoy it just for being absurd in a way that like feels like a quirk. It's like it feels like the story is in on the joke for once.
Yeah,
especially with Sonic when Robotnik finally makes himself known, and Sonic says, "What, Robotnik?" And Robotnik comes back with, "Who else would it be, you insipid idiot?" I think Sonic coming back with someone friendlier and better looking maybe it feels in tone with the rest of the comic.
Yeah, no, Sonic and Robotnik are built to bounce off each other, and it's a good example of that. I wonder how we'll feel about the Sonic X Baseball episode down the line.
Every time I hear something new about Sonic X, it just sounds weirder and weirder.
So yeah, this one's silly, but it's easily the best part of issue number 33.
Not exactly hard.
I didn't say it was hard. But what is hard is the cover to our next special, SuperSonic versus HyperKnuckles, and by hard I mean it goes hard.
Oh my gosh, we finally got to this special. I love this special. This is the best. This is the comics leaning so hard into just ridiculousness.
Yes, this is refuge in audacity in comic form. It is stupid, it is pointless, but it has legitimately nice art from Mr. Mooney, and
Yeah.
as much as Gallagher's writing is not my favorite, it has Sonic and Knuckles fighting in their most pointless fight, and it's fun.
Well, it's very clear that they're aware of what they've done, and they're like, let's just go all in.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Crash of the Titans, and Sonic and Knuckles fight over Chaos Emeralds and rings, taking their power to new heights. That is my whole summary, and yeah, no, Tails says 4-1 they're in a fight by page 6, and it's like, you guys wrote this. You don't have to have no justification for it.
No, I love that, because then I flip ahead to page 6, I'm like, you clever devils.
I don't know, because I feel like you could craft something meaningful out of this, though, because Knuckles' motivation here is that he's like, Angel Island used to be held up by 12 Chaos Emeralds, now there's just 1, so I gotta get more, and Sonic is like, we need the emeralds for our thing, and that makes sense as a reason to fight, but that's not why they fight. They fight because Sonic walks up to Knuckles and punches him in the face for no reason.
That's a pretty good reason to fight.
But why is he punching? What are you doing? They don't actually have conflicting motives. Sonic just feels like punching him.
Yeah. No, there's no reason to fight. They just
Not
do
really.
it anyway.
Yeah.
I think that was
that
was the intention.
Stupid.
Well, because they're fighting, and then Sally shows up and is like, "Knock it off, you idiots!" And they're like, "Okay." Like, they do it very quickly, which demonstrates that they're not fighting over anything.
I know, but it's like, if this were just like they get into a tumble because they just happen to really enjoy fighting, like, A, that would make it feel slightly gay, which I'd approve of, and B, if you made that explicit, it would feel tongue-in-cheek. It would feel like, again, the comic is in on the joke. I don't think it's completely in on the joke, is the thing.
Even if that's not the intention, that is completely my interpretation.
Fair enough.
That's the way it's portrayed, is they're fighting just to fight.
I guess. And of course, the actual meat of the story, or not the meat of the story, but the meat of the fight, it starts in part 3 or whatever, which I don't even know why there's a different part between these two pages, because Sally's like, hey, look at this, and then it shows you what it is, but why do we need more logos for that? I don't know.
Because then they can use the Sonic and Knuckles logo when Sally refers to Sonic and Knuckles, and I laugh.
That's probably why.
Probably.
Here's a question, why are there Eggman robots here, is my question.
Are there any special stages that have Eggman robots in them in the games?
I can't think of any.
Yeah, I don't know. Because normally I'm like, this opens a portal into a game, but I can't think of any game that this makes sense to open up a portal into.
Well, in the special stage, it's not a special stage, but the zone, it looks like, I don't know, maybe the Sonic 1 to 8-bit special stages? But whatever.
Also, doesn't this... Wait, have the comics actually established how the rings were made?
I don't think so. I don't know if we've seen the Lake of Rings yet, but yeah, this is what establishes that it's the Chaos Emerald rather than just a power crystal that makes the rings.
Alright. Okay.
And that makes sense. Thank you for making a thing that kind
of
works.
No, that does make sense. I'm just... For some reason, I was thinking that they'd already established.
So, you're thinking of the What If story where Sonic and Robotnik grew up together, and in that one, Chuck made the rings, like in Stat AM.
Right,
However, I don't know if that's the case in the comics.
Okay.
It is starting to blend together in my head. They also establish here, they have Sally mention that she knew Knuckles as a kid.
Yeah, that just randomly mentioned.
So this is one of the least consequential plot points to get brought up as many times as it eventually does. They do very little with the relationship between these two, and it just doesn't make much sense because, like, it's not easy to get to Angel Island. I mean, I guess they eventually have ships or whatever, but Sally and Knuckles do not have a dynamic is the thing.
Just gotta tease those plot points, I guess. I prefer this over the way Penders teases plot points.
With
I suppose.
two-page
Penders was the one who
minis.
actually followed up on this point, so... But
So-
you know, we're ignoring the main draw of Supersonic
Yeah.
versus HyperKnuckles, which is Supersonic versus HyperKnuckles. They race through the zone. They each get 7 emeralds and 50 rings and fight.
So this is not something particular to the comics, I think. I honestly don't know. This is a point that's always confused me. Why is it Supersonic and HyperKnuckles? Why not Super Knuckles?
That's a good question.
Does Knuckles have 2 super forms in Sonic 3? He does, right?
Yes, he does. It's only Tails that doesn't.
Okay. Maybe Knuckles, the emeralds he happened to grab were super emeralds and we didn't know it.
Oh.
Damn, alright.
Okay.
Except I think super emeralds also work differently in this comic because it's something to do with Nate Morgan. I don't know.
Oh my god.
Nate Morgan, yes.
Anyway, Art Mawini gets to flex his skills here, and that's the main draw of this, is that legitimately we have big panels of them beating the crap out of each other, and I like them.
That's legit good art.
This is awesome. It's just silly over the top.
Well, and that makes sense for, Supersonic and HyperKnuckles.
No, I was saying that in a positive way for sure. You know, Knuckles being sort of straightforward, not too smart, maybe. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but sometimes that annoys me. But I really like it here when he's got great lines like, now I can use my whirling fists like wheels and my feet like feet, and he kicks Sonic.
Yeah. Well, it's Knuckles being a punch first, ask questions later kind of guy, and that makes sense for him.
That's very fitting.
And yeah, no, it's fun. I wouldn't say it's like Dragon Ball Z battles, even if this is, forms inspired by Dragon Ball Z, just because the fighting is much more conventional. They just kind of go fisticuffs. They don't really fly around.
Yeah, they're not shooting lasers or flying around.
Which, it's like, I'm not really complaining about this, but that's not how Supersonic is supposed to be drawn.
What do you mean?
His quills aren't up.
He gets more quills, but it doesn't go up.
So they gave him a screenshot of Sonic when he's on like one of the barrels or something in Sonic 3, where his spines are not pointing up.
Oh, they gave him the sprites, the unfinished sprites of Supersonic.
Yeah.
If only Sonic Origins had come out 20 years earlier. Anyway, yeah, no, they fight and they run at each other really fast and they collide so hard that they blow up the entire zone.
That is the most perfect way to end this fight.
Honestly, I don't know if there would be a better way to end it.
Yeah, and nothing of much consequence happened as a result of this, except that Knuckles does manage to get one emerald from this whole ordeal.
I don't know how I managed to do that. That doesn't make any sense to me. But I'll take any opportunity to have Knuckles pull a fast one. Sure.
We also get to see more of Mighty's personality that you mentioned last time, Lauren, which is that he's just standing around waiting for Knuckles. He doesn't have anything to do.
Yes, yeah, that's like yep.
So fun first story, and for our second story, we get a pivotal moment. We get the most important character introduction of anything that Penders will write, and I'm saying that unironically, because this story is Fathers and Sons, written by Kantorovich and Penders, and drawn by Penders, where Knuckles recounts his upbringing and resolves to rescue the missing Chaotix. That second part doesn't really matter. It is the flashback backstory comic for Knuckles, where we are finally introduced to the primordial Penders character, Knuckles' father, Locke.
I'm glad that I have not read a whole lot of the later comics, because you're building this up so much, and I have like little hints of like what you might be talking about, but I'm like, this story is rather inoffensive. Where could this be going?
Locke is the best defined character that Penders ever wrote, and I say that while also making clear that Penders did not understand what would have been good about this character if he knew how to write him correctly. As of right now, he's not that bad. The plot of this story is basically that Locke is training Knuckles to be the Guardian or whatever, and this is like 10 years ago, so Knuckles is like 6 years old here, despite looking exactly the same. And so he's teaching him about being a guardian, and they live alone, and he's saying, oh, the rest of our race is dead, etc. And apparently, the correct course of action that Locke sees to take here after this is to jump into a wall of fire and kill himself.
I mean, it's pretty obvious he didn't kill himself.
Well, we have seen now that he was the guy in the robe from that other comic, so he's still alive. But from Knuckles' perspective, he just faked his own death and left his son alone on this island for 10 years.
Wait a second. Bruce, was that apparent to you that the robed person was Locke?
No.
Okay, I'm glad. Okay, it's not just me. Really? That was him?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I'm sorry. I maybe I should have treated that like more of a spoiler, but we are going to see Archimedes by next issue, and that means that we need a new person to be spying on Knuckles in a computer room, and that is going to be Locke for a really, really long time.
All right.
Yeah, I did not know that. Okay. Well, interesting. That adds some complexity to this, I suppose.
Anyway, so I'll say this. This is at least backstory for Knuckles that partially defines what his life has been like, and probably why he's kind of a mixed up dude. Because he saw what he thought was his dad killing himself at a young age, just after being told how important it is to do everything alone. And so he's kind of messed up about that.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because, Locke is trying to teach Knuckles patience, self-control, skepticism, and it's funny because the Knuckles we know from the games is impulsive, temperamental, and gullible.
Well, you can see Knuckles here in a great, very Knuckles moment when Locke is like, okay, see this little floating orb, what are you going to do? Knuckles is like, I'll punch it! And it's great. So then Locke leaves, so it's clear that, like, you can't just say a few words and then leave and instantly expect someone to learn it. So, yeah, like, I don't know what his game is, because I don't know how this ends up, but clearly he did not teach him well.
Yeah.
Traumatized him.
I suppose so, yeah. Well, Knuckles is... We're gonna see that Pender's characters carry a lot of trauma with them without being able to deal with it very well in a lot of cases.
Interesting.
So, I'll say this. This is... I'm actually not sure what the next issues are have in store for us, but this is probably the last, like, we're not going to be getting many more Pender's fuck around stories. That doesn't mean they're going to be great, but I think we're mostly done with fuck around.
Okay.
Good, I suppose. Yeah, this feels a bit more substantial than the other ones. I mean, it's more than 2 pages. At least.
If only we're drawn by somebody better.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Locke's beard in this, it looks like a tumor because it's the same color as his face.
At least as the final page of this special, we get a really cool piece of artwork of SuperSonic and HyperKnuckles.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So yeah, weird story, but at least interesting enough to provide us with stuff to talk about.
If it continues like this, it'll at least be interesting.
So here's the question. How do we rank this special since we've been ranking them?
Oh god.
So currently our best is still Sonic in Your Face, followed by Triple Trouble, followed by Sonic and Knuckles. I think that was all of them. Do we have one more that I'm forgetting?
That sounds right.
Alright, so I'm going to say this is better than Sonic and Knuckles because that was just not a good special. And the Pender's fuck around is, like, actually necessary to read, which means I could even put it above Triple Trouble. I guess I could even make this, you could even make the case that this is the best special so far.
Honestly, it kind of is.
I mean, I wasn't going to come right out with that. I was going to wait for you guys to say things first. But yes, my very incredibly biased opinion is this is the best because, as I said, I've always loved this one. I got, what was it? Oh yeah, this is a Sonic Select Book 2. And when I got this, by the way, specifically because of the Mecha Madness scam. And to have this also included with it, I was like, this is such a great bonus. This is a wacky story. I love this. So, yeah, no, I love this special.
Who would have thought that you can make a special survive just by good art and good pacing?
Who would have thought?
Well, let's hope that energy continues into Sonic number 34, our last comic of tonight. We got more rad Spaziant cover art.
And more very detailed Spaziant hands.
Yeah, he's got the gangle hands.
This is a great cover, though.
It's a good cover.
and the story is To Bot or Not To Bot, which is written by DeCesare and drawn by Brian Thomas, a new penciler, whose art is a little bit weird. It's not terrible.
It's fine.
The main thing I would say is that he sometimes draws the character's arms too long, and he does not know at all how to draw Sally. Sally looks weird in every single drawing of this issue. But the plot of this issue is that Dulcie overhears Robotnik's plans to invade the Great Forest with an army of combots, but the Freedom Fighters' plan to retaliate is derailed when Uncle Chuck and Mutsky have their robotic programming reverted.
Robotnik programming isn't really incorrect.
No, that's true. So this immediately brings to mind Sonic Conversion, the first Sat AM Season 2 episode where they try to de-roboticize Chuck and Bunny.
Yeah.
The difference being that that's not what resets Chuck's personality.
It is sort of similar to that, yeah. But in this one, Robotnik gets a fabulous general uniform. Honestly, 10 out of 10. I love this. I like to think that every single medal on there has some sort of stupid reason that he earned that.
I'd like to also point out. I'd like to point out also that with the sunglasses on, he looks more like. I know they're at least in the games they're the same person, but he looks like Eggman.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that's true.
Well, I feel like they're also bringing across. I'm trying to figure out what vibe he gives me because there's the old. They say that Robotnik has sort of a Theodore Roosevelt aesthetic going on. Honestly, his drawings in this kind of remind me of Winston Churchill.
There's a bit of like a combination of Roosevelt and Churchill.
It's that he reminds me of caricatures of Churchill, I guess.
Yeah.
But he introduces us to his new weapons, which are combots, which are, I guess, just basically smarter SWAT bots.
So, I don't know what you two think, but I never really much liked the combots. The SWAT bots are already, they don't seem to fit quite with classic Eggman robots, which is fine. I mean, Side AM was trying to be more serious or whatever, but at least the SWAT bots talked, right? But the combots, I don't think they ever speak. I could be wrong. At least they speak less. So they really just seem like generic soldiers, and I don't like them.
I think that's part of the idea.
SWAT bots are like Sonic stormtroopers, including the innate comedy that like Star Wars stormtroopers have. Combots are more like they're more like army men. And I mean literally because they're green and camouflaged and copy-pasted on this first panel, I might add.
I'm pretty sure they are basically I'm pretty sure they are supposed to basically just be soldiers.
So yeah, I agree. They're not as good, and SWAT bots were already a departure. But they don't show up that often, so that means it's not that big an issue.
True.
Also, I knew that you were going to talk about Robotnik's war outfit.
Well, I love Robotnik's outfits. Whenever he changes, it's amazing.
I know.
I love Robotnik. He's great.
It's very nice when he does it.
I'm very happy that I predicted that. As for what actually happens, we have a couple of these different encounters and a couple different plans. We have Bunny, Antoine, and Tails dressed in like black, looking like they're gonna like rob a jewelry store more than anything else.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe that Simpsons episode where he tries to destroy Moe's car for the insurance money. But Sonic ends up getting captured and mounted on the front of Robotnik's tank, which I actually really like.
I mean, that is like very
I think it's
fitting?
Consistent. It's
fitting, yeah. It's consistent, fitting.
I will say whenever there has to be an excuse why Robotnik doesn't just immediately roboticize one of the heroes, I think this is one of the better ones. Oh yeah, I'll put him in front of my tank. That's great.
He wants to display his victory. It's his prize.
Yes. I think, yeah.
And the way that this ends up being resolved, essentially, is that I almost said Muck and Chutsky. Chuck and Mutsky were basically, I think, just pretending to have their brains rewritten.
I think so.
Which so there's the weird thing about that is that at the end, Robotnik is like, "Oh shoot, I'm losing. I need to run away and escape." And piloting the aircraft is Chunkle Muck. And like, why would he let Robotnik escape if he's actually in control of his mind.
Yeah, why don't you just drop him in a lake if you're flying the ship right there?
Well, because then you don't have a villain.
Yeah, I know. That's not what I'm talking about.
No, I know. It's
I have to bring that up, but I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. But the thing
From-
is, they're trying to do like a
from a
bamboozle
standpoint.
plot, and
Yeah.
so it makes sense when you first see it, but it doesn't make sense when you look back on it. And they could have just adjusted. It literally could have just been a Combot flying it, like easy fix.
Yeah, I guess it's why does it have to be Chuck? Because if it is Chuck, you can make the argument that, oh, he's trying to keep his cover, because they still want to be spies at the end. But the fact that it is Chuck at all is weird.
Yeah, well, that makes sense before Robotnik is defeated, but at that point, his army is, like, decimated. He was thrown over a cliff. So I think you can drop the pretense at that point.
You say thrown over a cliff. They were just made to walk off a cliff like lemmings, but yeah.
Well, yeah. It's as Robotnik referenced, it's the same thing as the tanks, demolition tractors, whatever.
Oh yeah. In the Sonic Punch Face story. I don't know why that's what I remember it being called, but
one other thing I have to point out. So at the end, Sally is talking with Sonic, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that was a great plan. Wouldn't it be even better if you had told me about it in the first place?" And this is the sweetest bit of payback since miniseries issue number 2, where Sally has her own plan that she doesn't let everyone else in on, and so like that's what you get.
oh, comeuppance. If only this, had actually been, a Gallagher story with that, it would have felt like, oh my gosh, he had a stroke of brilliance.
That was not intentional, I don't think, but I'm taking it anyway.
I don't know if DeCesare read the other stories. I don't know anything about him as a person. I've never even seen a picture of him. So the other part of this story that we get is not Pender's fuck about territory, because this actually is necessary information, but it's a sense of history, part 1, that is the first of like 3 or 4 parts, where Knuckles just recaps the history of Echidna society and how Angel Island rose into the sky. And it's all written by Kantrowitz and Penders and drawn by Penders, obviously.
So yeah, Echidna lore gets really interesting. I like to see them start to build that up a little bit here.
Yeah, the backstory is basically that they had this illustrious and, high-tech society, and there was a meteor that was going to hit it, and so they all congregated in the Hall of Learning, which, I might add, all of these echidnas are carbon copies of Knuckles. There's maybe 2 of them that have unique hairstyles.
Yeah,
they're all red. But they shot Angel Island into the sky to avoid getting hit by a meteor.
I like the interesting bit of lore when they're like, oh, we went out and mined for Chaos Emeralds. Like, long, long ago, Chaos Emeralds were much more common. They were just a mineral you could mine for. Assumedly, they were exploited, and that's why they become rarer.
That's a good point. But, I mean, it only took 12 to rise the island into the sky, so I don't know what they did with the rest of them.
I mean, it could be it could be that, and a combination of the fact that I don't know, this series lore gets really weird. It could be any number of things. Maybe there'll be actual explanations later, but I'm thinking, maybe over time the emeralds somehow slipped away into the special zones or whatever, and that's why they're not easily accessible. Maybe the ancient walkers hid them away because they were too powerful. I don't know.
Maybe the ancient walkers wanted to eat them. Maybe that's why they're so excited and steal the emerald in the Triple Trouble special.
Probably.
Like, I'm just thinking that that's the kind of thing that I would expect Gallagher to write, is just, they just have him, like, at a table wearing a bib, and holding a fork and knife. Like, I can imagine Monarch having to draw that for a story. But of course, we can't ever end off on a conclusion, so we instead end off on a cliffhanger where Knuckles says, it was a grand day in Echidna history when they rose into the sky, which it really shouldn't be, because you guys probably are not as self-sufficient as you believe you are, and you're going to run out of resources up there. But then he says, little did we dream that our salvation would one day give birth to Mount Fate and the greatest menace of all. And it's like, ooh, spooky, I wonder what that is. And then we don't get to find out until next week.
Yeah, I mean, that's par for the course at this point.
I know, but it makes it really hard to do conclusions to these episodes, because it's like, the best conclusion I can do is, to a review of what we just looked through, and it's like, it was better than last time, because there was less Pender's fuck about. There was still some. It's like the main takeaway here, I think, is that SuperSonic vs. HyperKnuckles was fun, and stories with Chuck are almost always better.
Of course.
Mm.
That's all I got. It's a little bit insubstantial right now.
Not too complicated, just for fun plots. Don't add up to much of anything, but sometimes they can be fun. See the hockey one. That's just kind of what these comics are right now.
Yeah, well, and at least next time we'll definitely have some more stuff to talk about, because we're going to be getting more of that Echidna history lesson, but we're also going to be getting the Knuckles mini-series. We're finally gonna learn who Archimedes is, and it's going to be incredibly disappointing, but there's going to be other stuff that we're going to appreciate, and other stuff that we think is dumb as hell, and we're going to see Edmund and Dimitri, and we're going to hear Bible quotes. It's going to be a hell of a thing.
Don't miss it.
With all that said, thank you guys so much for sticking with us through this strange journey, and we are going to be done for tonight. If you like the video, feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. If you want to contact us, you can reach us at deepdivezonepod@gmail.com or at deepdivezone on Twitter. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night, or day, whatever day it is. It's Sunday when we upload these, and we will see you next week.